The lonely traveler longs for grace. Grief hangs on his heart and follows the frost. Cold foam he cuts in the sea, sailing endlessly, aimlessly in exile. Fate has opened a single port, memory. He cries, I've drunk too many lonely dawns, gray with mourning. So those who thirst for glory smother secret weaknesses and longing. Neither weep, nor sigh, nor listen to the sickness in their souls. So I, lost and homeless, forced to flee the darkness that fell on the earth, I've traveled, sharing my bread with sorrow alone, an exile in every land. And as for the outsiders who now follow me, loving my name and wanting to be my servants, I'll bring them to my holy mountain and give them joy in my house of prayer. They'll be welcome to worship the same as the insiders, to bring burnt offerings and sacrifices to my altar. My house of worship will be known as a house of prayer for all people. The decree of the Master, God Himself, who gathers the exiles of Israel. I will gather others also, gather them in with those already gathered.
I was kicked out at the age of 13. I was homeless on the streets. When I was 14, got into heavy drugs, stealing cars, and things like that. My relationship with God during that time was non-existent. He would never even cross my mind, didn't believe in a God. By the time I was 17, I caught my first 3 felonies. Did some time, finished probation, graduated high school, and I ended up getting married. I was with my wife for 9 months, and she ended up getting murdered. I was in a really, really dark place at that time. Got really heavily into drugs, and one of my friends, who was a female, took me in off the street and gave me a place and got me back on my feet. We ended up dating, and she got pregnant. I lived an honest life for 4.5 years until we broke up, and I ended up losing my job. Now my kids are depending on me, so I went back to doing what I knew how to do best. That started a very huge spiral downhill. I found out the FBI was after me. They wanted to give me 12 years in prison. Still running amok. I'm now on probation for the feds. And 4 months later, I catch a whole new charge for the exact same thing I'm on probation for, this time with the state. Now, at the time, I didn't realize that this was a God thing, but He needed me to get picked up by the state to end up at Red Rock, which is a state correctional facility. I was still doing everything I said I wasn't gonna do in prison, and it wasn't looking good. And I remember laying in my bed, and I had pictures of my kids at the foot of my bed. And I remember seeing my son's face and thinking to myself, I don't want my son to ever have to go through the life I just went through or experience half of what I just had to experience. And I don't want my son to come here. And I cried out to God right there. That was the first time in probably 10 years that I'd even mentioned the word God in that kind of form. And cried out to him. I said, look, Lord, I can't do this anymore. I need you. 2 days later, I ended up getting put in for a cell move. The cellie that I had moved in with, I had seen going to multiple Bible studies. That very first weekend, I went to the church. I was at Red Rock. I remember going up to the chaplain and just saying, Chaplain, I need to be around you and these guys more. I don't care what it is. I want to serve. I'm here to help in any way I can. And from that moment on, I surrendered my heart 100% to God.
So our time at Red Rock was like nothing I've ever experienced before. What started as a simple request for a small service turned into full setup. We went in there and they allowed us to come in and bring a full team. We did 2 services that were packed out. It was amazing. I've never seen people go after the presence of God with so much reckless abandon. At the end of each service, there was a line. The team was supposed to stand behind this line on the ground, and all the inmates had to stand on this other side of the line. We didn't know this at the time, but usually people who come in to visit don't step over the line. It didn't cross our mind not to, so we just walked right over the line and spent time with the inmates, just getting to know them, and that's where we met Falcon.
When I was in Red Rock, I was a part of the worship band. We played so many Hillsong songs. We got the Hillsong channel in that prison as well. So when we found out that Hillsong Church is actually coming to Red Rock and that you guys were going to bring your own band and own equipment, we were just so excited for what God was really doing to that place. I was able to connect with all of the members that did come, including Nathan Del Turco. I remember telling them that I was getting out in a couple months, and all of them were just so friendly and so open and told me, you know, when you get out, we have a place for you. Come see us, come to Hillsong. I get out of prison September 19th, and that was a Thursday. I made it a point while I was in prison to find a house that was going to be near Hillsong campus. So I go to Hillsong Mesa that Sunday, and that was when I was able to reconnect with Nathan Del Turco and see everybody else. And everybody remembered me too. I thought I was going to have to tell them who I was, but as soon as they saw me, they came up and said, man, how long have you been out? It's great to see you. And that felt really good. Since I've been out, things outside of church have been great. Since then, I've been in the process of starting a brand new business. It'll be launched next month. I have a actual full-time job as well, making really good money. That's allowing me to open up these businesses. I have a roof over my head. My rent's always paid, always have food. The Lord provides. To feel accepted feels amazing. It's definitely something that you think about while you're in there, about what people are going to think about you when you get out, especially people in a church. There's such a stigma on the church about being so judgmental, and Hillsong, I've never gotten that feeling from. I've never even seen that at Hillsong. Everybody's just so open and so welcoming. When they hear about my past, and they hear the details about it, they're so excited for what God has done and can do to somebody. They're not worried about what you've done in your past. They're worried about what God is about to do for you and in your life. And I'm just so blessed to be able to take the mess that I was living in and be able to turn it into a message.
I've always been someone who needed to just express outwardly the way I feel inside, and tattoos was kind of like this way to just express your own story, you know, whatever that is, and there's so many different styles. There's so much depth in the art of tattooing, but I just had a passion for it from a really young age. Like I went from drawing maybe like once or twice a month to just like drawing every day. When I was growing up in North Carolina, I was raised in the church. And then as I came into really who I was as an adult, and I really started to not feel welcomed or included. You know, I was this artsy kid. I loved art. My boyfriend was black. I was misunderstood and I didn't fit in, and I didn't go along with gender norms, and I felt really kind of on the outside. I would walk into church sometimes and people would look at me. They'd ask me questions like, why are you here? You don't belong here. It really put me in like a bitter place of just feeling kind of angry that I felt like there was this community that didn't welcome me for who I was, but that I felt like was supposed to. it makes you question if you do belong in God's house. It makes you question how God sees you. That's really hurtful, and to a young person, it's confusing and it's hard. I was at a place where I didn't think there was a church for me, and I didn't feel like there was like a place in God's house for me. So I moved to Vegas with my husband. For the first 2 to 3 years, I wasn't going to church. What changed that was an invite from Pastor Joe. It was on social media, and I think it was over a year's time, and he had sent me a couple invites. The community, it seemed, they had through their videos and their photos, you could see a little bit more diversity. And just knowing the city we were in and how diverse it was, I was like, okay, like, that seems cool, you know? Like, that was definitely a positive thing that probably influenced me wanting to try. So the first time we visited the church, it was like a welcome home rather than, oh, why are you here? So it was just this contrast in feelings of what I was used to actually having an atmosphere where I felt welcomed. I didn't feel anyone was staring at me weird. I felt just a part of everyone else in the room. Everyone was just super loving and kind, and it was a really cool word, and I felt really welcomed when I came. The church asked if people wanted to go on a mission trip to Houston to help with hurricane relief. We had been working for like 8-9 days, and it was finally a Sunday. I just remember like my friends Don and Rhett being like, okay, we're going to church now here in Texas. Immediately, like, all of the feelings that I had from the past came back. Like, I was scared to go to church. I didn't want to go. Really, everything changed this night in my prayer time for me, because I just remember him being like, now, Laura. Like, I just remember him saying that, and I knew what he meant was, now will you forgive my children, my church? Will you forgive yourself for holding on to this bitterness and this unforgiveness? And I just felt this call of like, you belong here, you belong in this church, like in your local church, but also just the church as a whole. Like, there's a place in my house for you. And I get emotional here because it was a powerful moment. It was a moment for me where I wrestled with God, because when you really come to a place where you surrender everything and God releases that from you, your heart changes. I lead a women's sisterhood group, and I lead the Next Steps team. For me, being someone who felt unwelcomed in the church to now being able to help lead a team that gets to welcome people into the church is just such a cool thing. It does make me picture God's house as this inclusive and diverse house that I think God has always intended it to be. And I think that's definitely a call that God has on my life. I'm someone who felt like an outsider, someone who was misunderstood, and now I don't feel misunderstood anymore, and I feel like part of God's house, and I know that God is going to continue to use me and his church to make outsiders feel like insiders and include them in our house.
You're no longer wandering exiles. This kingdom of faith is now your home country. You're no longer strangers or outsiders. You belong here with as much right to the name Christian as anyone. God is building a home. He's using us all, irrespective of how we got here, in what he is building. He used the apostles and the prophets for the foundation. Now he's using you, fitting you in brick by brick, stone by stone, with Christ Jesus as the cornerstone that holds all the parts together. We see it taking shape day after day. A holy temple built by God. All of us built into it. A temple in which God is quite at home.